Question 1. Consider a scenario where a project manager for a new initiative is under significant pressure from senior management to show immediate progress. Despite this pressure, the project manager is aware that the formal project initiation phase, as outlined in the Associated Management AIM regulatory framework, has not been fully completed. Specifically, a comprehensive feasibility study and detailed stakeholder analysis have not been finalized. The project manager is contemplating whether to proceed with initial development activities to demonstrate tangible results or to insist on completing the full initiation phase before any significant work begins. Option A. Proceed with initial development activities to demonstrate early progress, as the pressure from senior management indicates a need for visible results. Option B. Insist on completing the full project initiation phase, including the feasibility study and stakeholder analysis, before commencing any significant development work. Option C. Focus solely on the technical aspects of development, assuming that the business case and stakeholder needs will become clearer as the project progresses. Option D. Delegate the completion of the feasibility study and stakeholder analysis to a junior team member, while proceeding with initial development to appease senior management. Correct answer is A. Proceed with initial development activities to demonstrate early progress, as the pressure from senior management indicates a need for visible results. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for project progress with the fundamental regulatory requirement for proper project initiation. The pressure to demonstrate early momentum can lead to shortcuts that undermine the integrity of the project lifecycle and expose the organization to compliance risks. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all necessary foundational steps are taken before significant resources are committed. The correct approach involves meticulously adhering to the Associated Management AIM regulatory framework's requirements for project initiation. This includes conducting a thorough feasibility study, defining clear project objectives and scope, identifying key stakeholders and their requirements, and establishing a preliminary budget and timeline. This approach is correct because it aligns with the AIM guidelines that mandate a robust initiation phase to ensure projects are viable, well-defined, and have stakeholder buy-in before proceeding. This proactive stance minimizes risks, ensures resource allocation is justified, and sets a clear path for successful execution, thereby fulfilling regulatory obligations for responsible project management. An incorrect approach of proceeding with project execution without completing the defined initiation steps is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes AIM's emphasis on a structured project lifecycle. By bypassing the feasibility study, the project may be based on flawed assumptions, leading to wasted resources and potential project failure, which is a breach of due diligence expected under AIM. Similarly, neglecting to clearly define objectives and scope introduces ambiguity, increasing the likelihood of scope creep and stakeholder dissatisfaction, both of which are regulatory concerns under AIM's project governance principles. Failing to identify stakeholders and their requirements means critical perspectives are missed, potentially leading to a project that does not meet business needs or regulatory compliance standards, a direct violation of AIM stakeholder engagement mandates. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and sound project management principles. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the AIM framework for each project phase. When faced with pressure to accelerate, professionals should clearly articulate the risks associated with skipping initiation steps, referencing the relevant AIM guidelines. They should advocate for the necessary time and resources to complete the initiation phase properly, demonstrating how this upfront investment will prevent greater costs and risks later in the project lifecycle. This proactive and compliant approach ensures that projects are initiated on a solid foundation, meeting both business objectives and regulatory expectations. Question 2. The audit findings indicate that the current performance evaluation system, which solely compares actual operating results against the static master budget, may be misrepresenting departmental efficiency due to significant fluctuations in sales volume. Management is considering alternative approaches to better assess operational performance and identify areas for process optimization. Which of the following approaches would best address the audit findings and align with principles of effective financial management and performance assessment? Option A. revising the master budget retroactively each month to match the actual sales volume, effectively creating a new static budget each period. Option B. Focusing performance evaluations solely on the absolute net profit achieved, without detailed analysis of budget variances or activity levels. Option C. Continuing to use the master budget for performance evaluation, but providing qualitative explanations for all variances, regardless of their magnitude. Option D. Implementing a flexible budget system that adjusts budgeted costs based on actual sales volume achieved, allowing for a more accurate comparison of actual results to a budget reflecting the actual level of activity. Correct answer is D. Implementing a flexible budget system that adjusts budgeted costs based on actual sales volume achieved, allowing for a more accurate comparison of actual results to a budget reflecting the actual level of activity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires management to reconcile differing perspectives on budget performance, where one perspective focuses on static targets and the other on dynamic, activity-based realities. The audit findings highlight a potential disconnect between reported performance and operational efficiency, necessitating a nuanced approach to performance evaluation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that performance metrics are fair, accurate, and drive appropriate managerial behavior, aligning with the principles of sound financial management and governance expected within the Associated Management AIM framework. The correct approach involves utilizing a flexible budget to evaluate performance. This method adjusts the master budget based on the actual level of activity achieved. By comparing actual results to a flexible budget that reflects the actual volume of operations, management can isolate the impact of variances due to changes in activity levels from those caused by cost control or efficiency issues. This aligns with best professional practice by providing a more accurate and equitable assessment of managerial performance. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach promotes transparency and accountability. It prevents managers from being unfairly penalized for factors outside their control, e.g., increased sales volume leading to higher total costs, which would appear unfavorable against a static master budget, and allows for a clearer identification of areas requiring attention. This is consistent with the AIM's emphasis on robust financial reporting and effective management control systems. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the master budget for performance evaluation. This static approach compares actual results to a budget established for a predetermined level of activity. This fails to account for fluctuations in sales volume or production levels, leading to potentially misleading variances. For instance, if sales volume is higher than budgeted, total costs will naturally be higher, resulting in an unfavorable cost variance on the master budget, even if costs per unit were well controlled. This can demotivate managers and lead to poor decision-making, as it doesn't reflect true operational efficiency. Ethically, it can be seen as unfair and lacking in due diligence by not providing a true picture of performance. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore budget variances altogether and focus only on absolute profit figures. While absolute profit is a key outcome, ignoring variances means overlooking the underlying operational drivers and potential inefficiencies or efficiencies. This approach fails to leverage the diagnostic power of budgeting for process optimization. It represents a failure in effective financial management and control, as it bypasses a critical tool for identifying deviations from planned performance and investigating their causes. This lack of analytical rigor is contrary to the AIM's expectation of proactive management and continuous improvement. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the purpose of the budget and performance evaluation. 2. Recognizing the limitations of static budgeting when activity levels change. 3. Employing flexible budgeting as a superior tool for performance assessment in dynamic environments. 4. Investigating all significant variances, whether favorable or unfavorable, to understand their root causes. 5. Using this understanding to drive process improvements and inform future budgeting and strategic decisions. This systematic approach ensures that performance evaluation is fair, informative, and contributes to the overall success of the organization. Question 3. Governance review demonstrates that the current organizational structure, while fostering rapid innovation through cross-functional teams, lacks clear lines of accountability for strategic resource allocation decisions, leading to potential conflicts of interest among senior managers who also lead these teams. Considering the associate in management, aim, regulatory framework, which of the following actions best addresses these findings while upholding ethical standards? Option A. Maintain the current cross-functional team structure, but increase the frequency of informal meetings to discuss resource allocation challenges. Option B. Encourage team leaders to self-regulate their resource allocation decisions, relying on informal peer review to manage potential conflicts of interest. Option C. Delegate all resource allocation decisions to the most senior manager, regardless of their involvement in specific project teams, to ensure ultimate accountability. Option D. Implement a clear hierarchical structure with defined reporting lines for resource allocation, supported by a comprehensive conflict of interest policy that requires disclosure and independent review of any potential conflicts. The correct answer is D. Implement a clear hierarchical structure with defined reporting lines for resource allocation, supported by a comprehensive conflict of interest policy that requires disclosure and independent review of any potential conflicts. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the tension between organizational efficiency and ethical conduct, particularly concerning resource allocation and potential conflicts of interest. The governance review highlights a systemic issue that requires careful judgment to ensure compliance with the associate in management, aim, regulatory framework. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the benefits of a chosen organizational structure with the ethical obligations to act with integrity and avoid situations that could compromise professional duties. The correct approach, which involves a clear delineation of responsibilities and a robust conflict of interest policy, is right because it directly addresses the findings of the governance review by establishing accountability and mitigating risks. This aligns with AIM's emphasis on sound governance and ethical practice, ensuring that decisions are made in the best interest of the organization and its stakeholders, free from undue influence or personal gain. Specifically, by adopting a structure that clearly defines reporting lines and decision-making authority, and by implementing a policy that requires disclosure and management of potential conflicts, the organization upholds its commitment to transparency and ethical operations. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of decision-making over clear accountability would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the governance review's findings, potentially leading to unchecked power and a higher risk of unethical behavior or poor strategic choices. It violates AIM's principles by creating an environment where conflicts of interest can fester, eroding trust and potentially leading to regulatory breaches. Another incorrect approach, which involves maintaining the status quo without implementing any structural or policy changes, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of responsiveness to the governance review and a failure to proactively manage risks. It suggests an unwillingness to adapt and improve, which is contrary to the continuous improvement expected under AIM guidelines. Such inaction leaves the organization vulnerable to the very issues the review identified, potentially leading to reputational damage and regulatory scrutiny. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the governance review's findings, an assessment of the potential ethical and regulatory risks associated with different organizational structures, and the development of clear policies and procedures to mitigate those risks. This includes consulting relevant AIM guidelines, seeking expert advice if necessary, and ensuring that any chosen structure supports ethical conduct and accountability. The ultimate goal is to select an approach that not only enhances operational effectiveness, but also upholds the highest standards of integrity and compliance. Question 4. The efficiency study reveals that the company has significantly reduced its production costs for a key product line. The management team is now debating how to adjust the pricing strategy for this product. They are considering three main options: passing on the full cost savings to customers, maintaining current prices and increasing profit margins, or adjusting prices based on competitor offerings. Which pricing strategy best aligns with professional best practices and ethical considerations for management professionals? Option A. Passing on the full extent of the cost savings directly to the customer through a price reduction, regardless of market value or competitor pricing. Option B. adjusting prices to reflect the perceived value the product offers to the customer, potentially incorporating some of the cost savings while ensuring profitability and market competitiveness. Option C, adjusting prices solely based on what competitors are charging for similar products, aiming to match or slightly undercut their prices. Option D, maintaining current prices and leveraging the cost savings to significantly increase profit margins without adjusting the price offered to the customer. The correct answer is B, adjusting prices to reflect the perceived value the product offers to the customer, potentially incorporating some of the cost savings while ensuring profitability and market competitiveness. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge for management professionals, balancing internal cost considerations with external market realities and customer perceived value. The efficiency study highlights potential cost savings, but the decision on how to translate these savings into pricing strategy requires careful consideration of multiple factors beyond just the internal cost structure. The Associated Management AIM framework emphasizes ethical conduct and adherence to regulatory guidelines, which in this context means ensuring pricing is fair, transparent, and does not mislead customers or engage in anti-competitive practices. The correct approach is to adopt a value pricing strategy. This involves understanding the benefits and perceived worth of the product or service to the customer, and setting a price that reflects this value, rather than solely focusing on the cost of production or competitor pricing. Value pricing aligns with ethical business practices by ensuring that the price charged is justifiable to the customer based on the benefits they receive. It also promotes sustainable business by ensuring profitability while remaining competitive. Regulatory frameworks often encourage fair competition and consumer protection, which value pricing supports by offering products at prices that reflect their true worth to the market. Adopting a cost-plus pricing strategy would be incorrect. While seemingly straightforward, this approach can lead to overpricing if the markup is too high, or underpricing if the markup is too low, failing to capture the full value customers are willing to pay. Ethically, it can be problematic if it leads to prices that are not reflective of market value, potentially exploiting customers or failing to achieve fair market share. It also doesn't account for competitive pressures or customer perception of value, which are crucial for long-term success and market positioning. Choosing a competitive pricing strategy solely based on competitor prices would also be incorrect. This approach risks a race to the bottom, where prices are driven down to match competitors, potentially eroding profit margins and devaluing the product or service. It fails to consider the unique value proposition of the company's offering or the actual costs incurred. Ethically, it can lead to unsustainable business practices and may not accurately reflect the true cost or value of the product, potentially leading to market instability. The professional decision-making process for such situations involves a multifaceted analysis. First, understand the internal cost structure and any potential efficiencies gained. Second, thoroughly research and understand the target market's perception of value for the product or service. Third, analyze the competitive landscape to understand pricing benchmarks and potential market positioning. Finally, integrate these insights to develop a pricing strategy that is both profitable and sustainable, ethically justifiable, and compliant with all relevant regulations, prioritizing customer value and fair market practices. Question 5. Strategic planning requires a robust and fair recruitment process to secure the best talent. A hiring manager is under significant pressure to fill a vacant senior management position within 2 weeks due to a critical project deadline. The manager proposes to conduct informal, conversational interviews with a few candidates who were recommended by existing staff, and to rely heavily on their gut feeling about who would be a good fit. Also suggesting a quick online quiz they found that claims to assess leadership potential. What is the most professionally responsible approach to selecting a candidate for this role, considering the need for speed and effectiveness? Option A. Conduct structured interviews focused on job-related competencies and behavioral examples, and utilize a pre-employment assessment tool that has been validated for assessing the specific skills and abilities required for the senior management role. Option B. Expedite the process by selecting the candidate with the most impressive resume and the highest salary expectation, assuming their experience directly translates to immediate success in the role. Option C. Rely on informal interviews with candidates recommended by current staff, focusing on personal rapport and a general sense of cultural fit, and administer a widely available online personality quiz to gauge leadership potential. Option D. Prioritize candidates who express the most enthusiasm and confidence during brief, unstructured conversations, and select the individual who seems most eager to take on the role, regardless of formal qualifications or assessment results. The correct answer is A. Conduct structured interviews focused on job-related competencies and behavioral examples, and utilize a pre-employment assessment tool that has been validated for assessing the specific skills and abilities required for the senior management role. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient and effective recruitment with the ethical and legal obligations to ensure fairness and prevent discrimination. The hiring manager is under pressure to fill a critical role quickly, which can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of the selection process. Careful judgment is required to navigate these pressures while adhering to established best practices and regulatory requirements. The correct approach involves using a structured interview process that focuses on job-related competencies and behaviors, supplemented by a validated assessment tool. This approach is right because it systematically gathers relevant information about candidates' suitability for the role, minimizing the influence of subjective biases. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing employment practices, emphasize the importance of objective and fair selection methods. Using job-related questions and validated tests ensures that decisions are based on a candidate's ability to perform the job, rather than on irrelevant personal characteristics, thereby mitigating the risk of discrimination claims. This aligns with the principles of equal opportunity and fair employment. An incorrect approach that relies solely on unstructured interviews and personal impressions is professionally unacceptable. This method is prone to subjective biases, such as affinity bias or halo effect, where the interviewer's personal feelings or initial impressions unduly influence their evaluation. This can lead to discriminatory hiring practices, violating employment laws that prohibit discrimination based on protected characteristics. Another incorrect approach, using a personality test that has not been validated for the specific role or that measures traits unrelated to job performance, is also ethically and legally problematic. Such tests may inadvertently screen out qualified candidates based on irrelevant factors, leading to unfair outcomes and potential legal challenges. Furthermore, relying on informal references without a structured process can introduce bias and may not provide objective information about a candidate's capabilities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes fairness, objectivity, and compliance. This involves clearly defining the essential requirements of the job through a thorough job analysis, developing standardized interview questions and assessment criteria based on that analysis, and using validated selection tools. Regular review and validation of selection processes are crucial to ensure their continued effectiveness and fairness. When faced with pressure to expedite hiring, professionals must advocate for maintaining these rigorous standards, explaining the legal and ethical risks associated with compromising the selection process. Question 6. Operational review demonstrates that a manufacturing plant has been consistently exceeding permissible limits for a specific pollutant discharge into a local river, though current regulations do not mandate immediate cessation of operations. The company's primary objective is to maximize shareholder returns. Which of the following approaches best aligns with ethical frameworks and corporate social responsibility principles for managing this situation? Option A. Acknowledge the pollutant discharge but justify it as a necessary cost of doing business to maintain profitability, and only consider mitigation if stricter regulations are imposed. Option B. Investigate the feasibility of relocating the plant to a region with less stringent environmental regulations to reduce compliance costs and improve shareholder returns. Option C. Continue current operations, arguing that all regulatory requirements are being met, and focus on lobbying efforts to influence future environmental regulations to be more favorable. Option D. Implement immediate, albeit costly, upgrades to pollution control systems to bring discharge levels well below current regulatory limits, proactively engaging with the local community to address concerns and explore further environmental stewardship initiatives. The correct answer is D. Implement immediate, albeit costly, upgrades to pollution control systems to bring discharge levels well below current regulatory limits, proactively engaging with the local community to address concerns and explore further environmental stewardship initiatives. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial interests of the company with its long-term ethical standing and societal impact. The AIM framework emphasizes responsible management, which includes understanding and applying ethical principles in business operations. The challenge lies in identifying which ethical framework best guides the company's response to the identified environmental concerns, ensuring compliance with relevant regulations, and upholding corporate social responsibility, CSR. The correct approach involves adopting a stakeholder-centric ethical framework, specifically one that prioritizes the well-being of all affected parties, including the local community and the environment, alongside shareholders. This approach aligns with the principles of CSR, which mandate that businesses consider their impact on society and the environment. Regulatory frameworks often encourage or require companies to act responsibly, and a stakeholder approach ensures that the company goes beyond mere legal compliance to address the ethical dimensions of its operations. This proactive stance builds trust, enhances reputation, and mitigates long-term risks. An approach that solely focuses on maximizing shareholder value without considering the environmental impact is ethically flawed. While shareholder interests are important, an exclusive focus can lead to decisions that externalize costs onto society and the environment, which is contrary to CSR principles and can lead to regulatory penalties and reputational damage. An approach that prioritizes immediate cost savings by downplaying the environmental issues is also incorrect. This demonstrates a lack of integrity and a failure to acknowledge the company's responsibility. Such a stance ignores potential future liabilities, regulatory scrutiny, and the erosion of public trust, all of which can have significant negative financial and operational consequences. An approach that suggests waiting for explicit regulatory mandates before taking action is insufficient. Ethical management requires a proactive approach to CSR, anticipating potential issues and acting responsibly even in the absence of strict legal requirements. Relying solely on minimum legal compliance can lead to a reactive and potentially damaging posture. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and their interests. 2. Assessing the ethical implications of different courses of action against established ethical frameworks, e.g., utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, stakeholder theory. 3. Evaluating the company's CSR commitments and values. 4. Considering the potential short-term and long-term consequences of each action, including financial, reputational, and social impacts. 5. Consulting relevant legal and regulatory requirements. 6. Choosing the course of action that best aligns with ethical principles, CSR commitments, and the long-term sustainability of the business and its relationships with stakeholders. Question 7. Benchmark analysis indicates that a financial advisory firm is seeking to expand its client base by targeting individuals who are nearing retirement. The firm has identified two potential positioning strategies, one focusing on the perceived anxieties of this demographic regarding financial security in retirement, and another emphasizing the firm's expertise in providing tailored, long-term wealth management solutions designed to preserve and grow assets, which approach best aligns with regulatory expectations for responsible targeting and positioning. Option A. Use broad, generic marketing messages about retirement planning to capture as wide an audience as possible within the nearing retirement demographic. Option B. Target individuals nearing retirement by highlighting their anxieties about financial security and offering a quick-fix solution. Option C. Position the firm as an expert in providing tailored, long-term wealth management solutions designed to preserve and grow assets for individuals nearing retirement. Option D. Focus on aggressive sales tactics to secure clients nearing retirement, emphasizing immediate gains rather than long-term suitability. The correct answer is C. Position the firm as an expert in providing tailored, long-term wealth management solutions designed to preserve and grow assets for individuals nearing retirement. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a firm to balance aggressive market penetration with adherence to regulatory guidelines and ethical marketing practices. The core challenge lies in identifying and reaching the most receptive customer segments without engaging in misleading or unfair targeting. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen positioning resonates with the intended audience while remaining truthful and compliant. The correct approach involves developing a clear understanding of the target market's needs and preferences, and then crafting a value proposition that authentically addresses those needs. This positioning should be communicated through channels most likely to reach the target audience, ensuring that the messaging is transparent and avoids any form of misrepresentation. This aligns with the principles of fair competition and consumer protection, which are fundamental to regulatory frameworks governing financial services. Specifically, it upholds the ethical duty to act in the best interests of clients and to provide clear, fair, and not misleading information. An incorrect approach that focuses on exploiting perceived vulnerabilities or knowledge gaps within a broad, undifferentiated market segment is ethically unsound and likely to contravene regulations. Such a strategy risks mis-selling products or services, leading to poor client outcomes and potential regulatory sanctions. Another incorrect approach that relies on broad, generic marketing messages without specific segmentation fails to effectively reach the intended audience and represents a poor use of resources, potentially leading to a lack of competitive differentiation. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes aggressive sales tactics over genuine client suitability, even if targeting a specific segment, can result in clients being sold products that do not meet their needs, thereby violating fiduciary duties and consumer protection laws. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the target market and the firm's offerings. This should be followed by an assessment of how the firm's products or services can genuinely benefit specific customer segments. The positioning strategy must then be developed to clearly and truthfully articulate this value. Finally, all marketing and communication materials must be reviewed for compliance with regulatory standards and ethical considerations, ensuring transparency and fairness in all client interactions. Question 8. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new, less expensive communication platform could save the firm £50,000 annually. However, the firm's established culture strongly values open, direct, and immediate communication between all levels of staff, a value that the current, more expensive platform facilitates. The proposed new platform has features that might delay or filter communications, potentially hindering this cultural norm. Which approach best aligns with the principles of creating and maintaining a strong organizational culture as emphasized by the Associated Management AIM framework? Option A. Invest in training and communication initiatives to reinforce the importance of open communication and ensure employees understand how to maximize the benefits of the new platform, even with its potential limitations. Option B. Implement the new platform and monitor employee feedback, making adjustments only if significant productivity losses are observed. Option C. Prioritize the cost savings by adopting the new platform, assuming employees will adapt to any minor changes in communication flow. Option D. Reject the new platform outright due to the potential negative impact on the firm's culture, even if it means foregoing significant cost savings. The correct answer is C. Prioritize the cost savings by adopting the new platform, assuming employees will adapt to any minor changes in communication flow. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial benefits of a cost-saving measure against the long-term reputational and ethical implications of potentially compromising a core organizational value. The Associated Management AIM framework emphasizes ethical conduct and the importance of a strong organizational culture in achieving sustainable success. A decision that prioritizes short-term cost reduction over established cultural norms, especially those related to employee well-being or integrity, can lead to significant downstream negative consequences, including decreased morale, increased staff turnover, and damage to the firm's reputation, which can ultimately outweigh any initial savings. The correct approach involves recognizing that a culture of transparency and open communication, even when it incurs some immediate costs, e.g., through training or communication platforms, is fundamental to maintaining trust and ethical behavior. This approach aligns with the AIM's emphasis on responsible management and the creation of a positive and productive work environment. By investing in initiatives that reinforce the desired culture, management demonstrates a commitment to its values, fostering employee buy-in and reducing the likelihood of future ethical breaches or cultural erosion. This proactive stance is often more cost-effective in the long run than dealing with the fallout of a weakened culture. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost savings without considering the cultural impact is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a narrow, short-sighted perspective that neglects the broader implications of management decisions on organizational health. Specifically, it violates the ethical principles of responsible leadership and the duty to foster a workplace that upholds integrity and respect. Such an approach can lead to a culture where employees feel undervalued or that ethical considerations are secondary to profit, creating an environment ripe for misconduct and a decline in overall organizational performance. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing superficial changes without genuine commitment to cultural reinforcement is also problematic. While appearing to address the issue, this approach lacks the substance required to effect meaningful change. It can breed cynicism among employees, who may perceive the efforts as disingenuous, further eroding trust and damaging the culture. This approach fails to meet the AIM standards for effective leadership and cultural stewardship, as it does not genuinely embed desired values into the organization's operations or employee behaviors. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive assessment that extends beyond immediate financial metrics. Professionals must consider the impact of their decisions on all stakeholders, including employees, customers, and the wider community. This requires a deep understanding of the organization's stated values and culture, and an evaluation of how proposed actions will either strengthen or weaken them. A framework that integrates ethical considerations, long-term sustainability, and stakeholder impact alongside financial analysis is crucial for making sound and responsible management decisions. Question 9. The performance metrics show a strong positive correlation between increased investment in a new product development initiative and subsequent revenue growth, as identified through a multiple regression analysis. The analysis also indicated that a specific marketing channel, when controlled for other factors, has a statistically significant positive impact on sales. Given these findings, how should an associate in management, AIM, interpret and present these results to senior management and stakeholders, considering the regulatory framework for financial analysis and reporting? Option A. Interpret the regression analysis as identifying significant associations and potential drivers of revenue growth and sales, and present the findings with appropriate caveats about the correlational nature of the analysis and the possibility of other influencing factors. Option B. Conclude that the investment in product development directly caused the revenue growth and that the marketing channel is the sole driver of sales increases, presenting these as definitive causal links. Option C. Dismiss the findings of the regression analysis as purely statistical correlations that have no practical implication for business strategy or future revenue projections. Option D. Focus solely on the statistical significance of the marketing channel's impact, suggesting it is the only variable worth further consideration, and disregard the broader product development investment's contribution. The correct answer is B. Conclude that the investment in product development directly caused the revenue growth and that the marketing channel is the sole driver of sales increases, presenting these as definitive causal links. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the associate in management AIM to interpret statistical findings in a way that is both accurate and compliant with regulatory expectations for financial reporting and investment advice. The challenge lies in distinguishing between a statistically significant relationship and a causally proven one, and understanding the implications of each for decision-making and disclosure. Misinterpreting regression results can lead to flawed business strategies, inaccurate client recommendations, and potential regulatory breaches if the analysis is used to support claims that cannot be substantiated. The correct approach involves recognizing that simple linear regression and multiple regression, while powerful analytical tools, identify associations and predict outcomes based on observed data. They do not inherently prove causation. Therefore, when presenting findings, it is crucial to frame them as identifying relationships and potential drivers, rather than definitive causes. This aligns with the principle of providing clear, accurate, and not misleading information, which is a cornerstone of regulatory compliance. Specifically, for AIM, this means understanding that regulatory bodies expect analyses to be presented with appropriate caveats regarding the limitations of statistical models. The focus should be on the strength and direction of the identified relationships and their potential implications, while acknowledging that other unmeasured factors could be influencing the outcome. An incorrect approach would be to claim that the regression analysis definitively proves that one variable causes another. For example, stating that an increase in marketing spend directly causes a specific percentage increase in sales, based solely on a regression model, oversimplifies the complex interplay of factors affecting sales and could be considered misleading. This failure to acknowledge the correlational nature of regression analysis can lead to regulatory scrutiny, particularly if it forms the basis for financial projections or investment decisions that are not adequately supported. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the statistical significance of the findings altogether and dismiss the identified relationships as irrelevant. This would be a failure to leverage available analytical tools for informed decision-making and could also be seen as a dereliction of professional duty to conduct thorough analysis. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the limitations of the statistical methods employed. They should then focus on interpreting the results in terms of associations and predictive power, rather than causation. When communicating these findings, it is essential to use precise language that reflects the statistical nature of the analysis, including confidence intervals and measures of fit, and to clearly state any assumptions or limitations. This involves a process of critical evaluation, where the statistical output is considered alongside business context and domain knowledge, ensuring that conclusions drawn are reasonable and defensible from both an analytical and a regulatory perspective. Question 10. Benchmark analysis indicates a potential market shift that could significantly impact our product line's profitability. A manager must decide whether to initiate a costly product redesign or maintain the current offering and absorb potential losses. Which decision-making approach best aligns with the associated management AIM framework for effective risk assessment in this scenario? Option A. Relying on past experience and a strong feeling about which course of action is correct. Option B. Conducting a thorough analysis of market data, competitor actions, and financial projections to evaluate the risks and benefits of each option before making a decision. Option C. Deciding based on the immediate pressure from sales teams advocating for a specific course of action. Option D. Quickly choosing the option that seems most straightforward to implement, acknowledging that perfect information is unattainable. The correct answer is A. Relying on past experience and a strong feeling about which course of action is correct. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a manager to make a critical decision under pressure, with potentially significant consequences for the organization and its stakeholders. The challenge lies in balancing the need for a timely decision with the imperative to make a sound, well-justified choice, adhering to the principles of good management and ethical conduct as outlined by the Associated Management AIM framework. The AIM framework emphasizes a structured and evidence-based approach to decision-making, particularly in risk assessment, to ensure accountability and protect organizational interests. The correct approach involves a rational decision-making process. This entails clearly defining the problem, gathering relevant information, identifying and evaluating alternative solutions, and selecting the option that best mitigates identified risks while aligning with organizational objectives and regulatory requirements. This systematic method ensures that decisions are not based on incomplete information or emotional biases, thereby promoting objectivity and defensibility. The AIM framework implicitly supports this by advocating for due diligence and a thorough understanding of potential outcomes, which is crucial for effective risk management. An intuitive approach, while sometimes useful for experienced professionals, is professionally unacceptable in this context because it relies heavily on gut feelings and past experiences without rigorous analysis. This can lead to decisions that are biased, incomplete, or fail to account for novel risks, potentially violating the AIM's emphasis on evidence-based practice and responsible management. A bounded rationality approach, while acknowledging cognitive limitations, still requires a structured process of identifying and evaluating a satisfactory set of alternatives, even if not all possible options are explored. If this approach is applied superficially, without sufficient effort to gather and analyze available information, it can devolve into a less rigorous form of decision-making, similar to intuition, and thus fall short of the AIM standards for comprehensive risk assessment. A purely emotional approach is fundamentally flawed, as it prioritizes personal feelings or immediate reactions over objective analysis and strategic considerations. This is antithetical to professional management, which demands impartiality, foresight, and a commitment to the best interests of the organization and its stakeholders, as reinforced by the AIM's ethical guidelines. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Problem definition. Clearly articulate the risk and the decision required. 2. Information gathering. Collect all pertinent data, including historical trends, expert opinions, and regulatory guidelines. 3. Alternative identification. Brainstorm potential courses of action. 4. Evaluation. Assess each alternative against predefined criteria, including risk, cost, benefit, and alignment with objectives. 5. Selection. Choose the option that offers the most favorable risk-reward profile. 6. Implementation and monitoring. Put the decision into action and track its effectiveness, making adjustments as needed. Question 11. Compliance review shows that a manufacturing firm has experienced a recent increase in product defects, leading to customer complaints and potential regulatory scrutiny. The operations manager is under pressure to reduce costs. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while adhering to quality management principles and professional responsibility? Option A. Outsource the quality control function to a third-party vendor with a lower cost structure, without a thorough review of their quality management systems. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis of the defects and develop a targeted corrective action plan to address the underlying issues, ensuring that quality standards are maintained or improved. Option C. Implement a superficial quality check at the final stage of production and focus primarily on expediting the manufacturing process to meet cost reduction targets. Option D. Immediately reduce the frequency of quality inspections and relax material specifications to lower production costs, accepting a slightly higher defect rate as a new baseline. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis of the defects and develop a targeted corrective action plan to address the underlying issues, ensuring that quality standards are maintained or improved. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost reduction with the long-term imperative of maintaining product quality and customer trust, all within the specific regulatory framework governing the Associated Management AIM qualification. The AIM framework emphasizes ethical conduct, professional responsibility, and adherence to established quality management principles. A hasty decision to compromise quality for cost savings, even if seemingly beneficial in the short term, can lead to significant reputational damage, regulatory noncompliance, and ultimately, financial losses. Careful judgment is required to identify solutions that are both economically viable and ethically sound, upholding the integrity of the organization and its products. The correct approach involves a thorough root cause analysis of the quality deviations and the development of a corrective action plan that addresses the underlying issues without sacrificing essential quality standards. This approach aligns with best practices in quality management, such as those promoted by the AIM curriculum, which stresses continuous improvement and a proactive stance on quality assurance. By investigating the root causes, the organization can implement sustainable solutions that prevent recurrence, thereby ensuring compliance with any relevant quality standards and maintaining customer satisfaction. This demonstrates a commitment to professional responsibility and ethical business practices. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost reduction by reducing inspection frequency or material specifications would be professionally unacceptable. This fails to address the root causes of the quality deviations and instead introduces a higher risk of further product defects, potentially leading to regulatory sanctions, product recalls, and severe damage to the company's reputation. Such an approach disregards the ethical obligation to deliver safe and reliable products and violates the principles of sound quality management. Another incorrect approach, which involves simply accepting a higher level of defects as a new quality standard to save costs, is also professionally unsound. This not only undermines the organization's commitment to quality, but also erodes customer trust and could lead to legal liabilities if product performance or safety is compromised. It represents a failure to uphold professional standards and an abdication of responsibility for product integrity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the problem and its impact, including potential regulatory and ethical implications. Second, gather all relevant data and conduct a thorough analysis to identify root causes. Third, brainstorm and evaluate potential solutions, considering their impact on quality, cost, customer satisfaction, and regulatory compliance. Fourth, select the most appropriate solution that balances these factors and aligns with ethical principles and regulatory requirements. Finally, implement the chosen solution, monitor its effectiveness, and be prepared to make adjustments as needed. Question 12. Benchmark analysis indicates that a company is experiencing stagnant sales despite significant investment in advertising campaigns designed to stimulate demand. Which of the following strategic adjustments, focusing on the core marketing concepts of needs, wants, demands, value, and satisfaction, represents the most effective and ethically sound approach for an associate in management, aim to recommend? Option A. Increase advertising spend to create a stronger sense of urgency and desire, thereby converting more latent wants into immediate demands, irrespective of whether these align with underlying customer needs. Option B. Focus solely on improving post-purchase customer service to boost satisfaction levels, assuming that satisfied customers will naturally generate repeat demand and positive word of mouth, even if the initial offering did not fully meet their needs. Option C. Conduct a competitive analysis to identify and replicate successful demand generation tactics used by competitors, prioritizing market share growth through aggressive demand stimulation. Option D. Reevaluate the product or service offering to ensure it directly addresses fundamental customer needs and wants, and that the perceived value delivered significantly exceeds the perceived costs, thereby fostering genuine demand and long-term satisfaction. The correct answer is D. Reevaluate the product or service offering to ensure it directly addresses fundamental customer needs and wants, and that the perceived value delivered significantly exceeds the perceived costs, thereby fostering genuine demand and long-term satisfaction. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an associate in management, aim, to critically evaluate how a company's strategic decisions align with fundamental marketing principles, specifically the interplay between needs, wants, demands, value, and satisfaction, within the strict confines of the associate in management, aim, regulatory framework. The challenge lies in discerning which approach best reflects a deep understanding of customer centricity and ethical business practices, as mandated by the AIM framework, rather than simply focusing on short-term revenue generation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that proposed strategies are not only profitable, but also sustainable and ethically sound, fostering long-term customer relationships. The correct approach is to prioritize understanding and fulfilling genuine customer needs and wants, translating these into demands that the company can deliver value against, ultimately leading to satisfaction. This aligns with the AIM framework's emphasis on responsible business conduct and customer welfare. By focusing on delivering superior value, which is the customer's perception of benefits received relative to costs incurred, the company builds trust and loyalty. This approach is ethically sound, as it respects the customer's perspective and aims to create mutually beneficial exchanges. Regulatory justification stems from the AIM framework's implicit and explicit guidance on ethical marketing and customer relationship management, which underpins the concept of delivering genuine value. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on manipulating wants into demands, without a foundational understanding of underlying needs. This could lead to the company pushing products or services that customers do not genuinely require, potentially resulting in dissatisfaction and reputational damage. Ethically, this is problematic as it borders on deceptive practices, exploiting customer desires rather than addressing their fundamental requirements. Another incorrect approach is to equate demand with satisfaction without considering the perceived value. A customer may demand a product due to aggressive marketing, but if the perceived value is low, satisfaction will not be achieved, leading to negative outcomes. This fails to meet the AIM framework's expectation of delivering genuine, perceived value. Finally, focusing only on satisfaction without understanding the preceding stages of needs, wants, and demands can lead to reactive rather than proactive strategies, potentially missing opportunities to shape offerings that truly resonate with the target market and deliver sustainable value. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with thorough market research to identify and understand customer needs and wants. This understanding should then inform the development of products and services that meet these needs, thereby creating genuine demand. The company must then focus on delivering superior value in its offerings, ensuring that the perceived benefits outweigh the costs for the customer. Finally, measuring and ensuring customer satisfaction is crucial for feedback and continuous improvement, reinforcing the entire cycle. This iterative process, grounded in customer understanding and value creation, is the cornerstone of responsible and effective management as espoused by the AIM framework. Question 13. Market research demonstrates that a company needs to understand customer preferences for a new product line. The management team is considering several approaches to gather this information efficiently and cost-effectively. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for actionable insights with ethical and regulatory considerations for data collection? Option A. Designing a survey that collects detailed personal information, including contact details and demographic data, for future marketing outreach. Option B. Implementing a website experiment that tracks user browsing behavior and purchase patterns without explicit opt-in consent. Option C. Analyzing publicly available social media comments and posts related to similar products without seeking explicit consent from users. Option D. Conducting an anonymous online survey that asks targeted questions about product features and purchasing intent. Correct answer is D. Conducting an anonymous online survey that asks targeted questions about product features and purchasing intent. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a manager to balance the need for timely and cost-effective market insights with the ethical and regulatory obligations concerning data collection and privacy. The Associated Management (AIM) framework emphasizes responsible business practices, which include adhering to data protection principles. The challenge lies in selecting a data collection method that is both efficient and compliant, avoiding methods that could lead to reputational damage or legal repercussions. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen method respects individual privacy and data integrity. The correct approach involves utilizing primary data collection through a well-designed, anonymous online survey. This method is appropriate because it allows for direct engagement with the target audience to gather specific, relevant information about their purchasing habits and preferences. Anonymity is crucial for encouraging honest responses and complying with data privacy regulations, which typically require consent and protection of personal information. By focusing on aggregated, anonymized responses, the manager adheres to ethical data handling and minimizes the risk of identifying individuals, thereby respecting their privacy. This aligns with the AIM's emphasis on ethical conduct and responsible data management. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on secondary data from publicly available social media posts without explicit consent for research purposes. While social media can offer insights, using this data for targeted market research without consent raises significant privacy concerns and may violate data protection laws that govern the use of personal information. Another incorrect approach is to conduct an experiment involving tracking user behavior on a website without clear disclosure and opt-in consent. This infringes on user privacy and can lead to legal penalties and a loss of trust. Finally, using a survey that requires extensive personal identifiable information without a clear justification for its necessity and without robust security measures is also an inappropriate approach. This unnecessarily collects sensitive data, increasing the risk of a data breach and violating the principle of data minimization, which is a cornerstone of ethical data handling and regulatory compliance. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations and regulatory compliance from the outset. This involves identifying the research objectives, assessing the types of data required, and then evaluating potential data collection methods against legal requirements, such as data protection laws and ethical principles, like informed consent and privacy. A risk assessment of each method should be conducted, considering potential privacy breaches, data accuracy, and the cost-effectiveness of obtaining reliable insights. The chosen method should be the one that best achieves the research objectives, while minimizing ethical and legal risks. Question 14. The monitoring system demonstrates a potential transaction between the company and a supplier where the chief operating officer's spouse holds a significant ownership stake. The COO has indicated that the terms of the proposed transaction are highly competitive and beneficial to the company. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Chief Operating Officer to take? Option A. Authorize the transaction internally based on their authority, assuming the beneficial terms will satisfy any potential concerns. Option B. Immediately disclose the potential conflict of interest to the full board of directors and recuse themselves from any discussion or decision-making regarding this transaction. Option C. Proceed with the transaction as the terms are beneficial and inform the board only after the deal is finalized. Option D. Discuss the transaction with a few trusted board members to gauge their opinion before making a full disclosure to the entire board. The correct answer is B. Immediately disclose the potential conflict of interest to the full board of directors and recuse themselves from any discussion or decision-making regarding this transaction. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a director's fiduciary duty to the company and their personal interests, exacerbated by the potential for undisclosed related party transactions. The requirement for transparency and good governance, particularly concerning transactions that could benefit a director or their associates, is paramount. The board of directors has a legal and ethical obligation to act in the best interests of the company and its shareholders, which includes ensuring all material transactions are disclosed and properly approved. The correct approach involves immediate disclosure of the potential conflict of interest to the full board and recusal from any decision-making process related to the transaction. This aligns with the fundamental principles of corporate governance and directors' duties, which mandate acting with integrity, avoiding conflicts of interest, and ensuring transactions are conducted at arm's length and in the company's best interest. Specifically, under the Associate in Management (AIM) framework, directors are expected to uphold high ethical standards and comply with regulations concerning related party transactions and disclosure. This approach ensures that the board can make an informed and unbiased decision, free from the influence of a conflicted director, thereby protecting shareholder value and maintaining corporate integrity. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the transaction without full disclosure, arguing that the terms are favorable. This fails to acknowledge the director's duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the potential for even seemingly favorable terms to mask underlying impropriety or future detriment to the company. It violates the principle of transparency and can lead to shareholder distrust and potential legal repercussions for breach of fiduciary duty. Another incorrect approach is to seek approval from only a subset of the board without full disclosure to all directors. This circumvents the collective responsibility of the board and can be seen as an attempt to gain approval through a less scrutinizing group, undermining the integrity of the decision-making process. It also fails to ensure that all directors are aware of the potential conflict and can contribute to the decision-making process with full information. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to delay disclosure until after the transaction is finalized, hoping it goes unnoticed. This is a clear breach of disclosure obligations and demonstrates a lack of integrity. It not only exposes the company to significant regulatory penalties and reputational damage, but also constitutes a serious ethical lapse on the part of the director. The professional reasoning process in such situations should involve 1. Recognizing the potential conflict of interest immediately. 2. Consulting the company's internal policies and relevant regulatory guidelines regarding conflicts of interest and related party transactions. 3. Disclosing the conflict to the board of directors in its entirety. 4. Recusing oneself from any discussion or voting on the matter. 5. Cooperating fully with any independent review or investigation initiated by the board. Question 15. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant decline in departmental productivity following the announcement of a proposed restructuring aimed at improving operational efficiency. The management team is eager to implement the changes swiftly to reverse this trend. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional ethical standards in managing this organizational change? Option A. Prioritize the financial projections and cost savings associated with the restructuring, communicating these benefits to employees as the primary driver for the changes. Option B. Initiate a formal consultation process with affected employees, clearly outlining the proposed changes, the reasons for them, and providing a dedicated period for feedback and discussion before any implementation. Option C. Provide employees with a brief overview of the upcoming changes and assure them that their roles will be considered during the transition, without detailing specific impacts or timelines. Option D. Immediately implement the restructuring plan, focusing on communicating the benefits of the new structure and the necessity of swift action to regain productivity. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement the restructuring plan, focusing on communicating the benefits of the new structure and the necessity of swift action to regain productivity. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for organizational efficiency and adaptation with the imperative to comply with regulatory requirements and ethical obligations concerning employee rights and fair treatment during change. The pressure to implement changes quickly can lead to overlooking crucial procedural steps, potentially creating legal and reputational risks. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the change process is not only effective, but also legally sound and ethically defensible. The correct approach involves a structured and transparent communication strategy that adheres to established consultation procedures. This approach is right because it prioritizes informing affected employees about the proposed changes, the rationale behind them, and the potential impact on their roles. It also ensures that employees are given a genuine opportunity to provide feedback and that their concerns are considered. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that often mandate consultation periods and fair process during significant organizational changes, particularly those impacting employment terms or roles. Ethically, it upholds principles of respect, fairness, and transparency towards employees, fostering trust and mitigating potential grievances. An incorrect approach that proceeds with immediate implementation without prior consultation fails to meet regulatory obligations. Such a failure could lead to claims of unfair dismissal or breach of contract if employees' roles are significantly altered or terminated without due process. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for employee well-being and their right to be informed and heard, potentially damaging morale and organizational culture. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on the financial benefits of the change, neglecting the human element and procedural compliance, is also professionally unacceptable. While financial prudence is important, it cannot supersede legal and ethical duties. This approach risks legal challenges and reputational damage by prioritizing cost saving over fair treatment and regulatory adherence. A further incorrect approach that involves vague and infrequent communication about the changes creates uncertainty and anxiety among employees. This lack of clarity can lead to misunderstandings, rumors, and a breakdown in trust. While not an outright violation in all cases, it falls short of best practice and can exacerbate negative impacts of change, potentially leading to increased employee turnover and reduced productivity, and can be seen as a failure to act in good faith, which may have regulatory implications in certain contexts. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the proposed changes against all relevant legal and regulatory requirements. This includes understanding any statutory obligations regarding employee consultation, notice periods, and fair process. Simultaneously, ethical considerations regarding employee welfare, transparency, and fairness must be integrated. A robust change management plan should be developed that incorporates clear communication protocols, opportunities for feedback, and mechanisms for addressing employee concerns. Engaging with legal counsel and HR specialists early in the process is crucial to ensure compliance and mitigate risks. Question 16. The evaluation methodology shows that a company, Innovate Tech, is considering its pricing strategy for a new product. Its primary competitor, Synergy Corp, is expected to launch a similar product around the same time. Both companies face a choice: launch at a high price, aiming for maximum profit per unit, or launch at a low price, aiming to capture market share quickly. If both launch at a high price, both achieve moderate profits. If one launches high and the other low, the low-price company gains significant market share and moderate profits, while the high-price company incurs losses. If both launch at a low price, both achieve minimal profits due to reduced margins. Innovate Tech's management must decide on its pricing strategy, anticipating Synergy Corp's likely response, within the framework of UK competition law and CISI ethical guidelines. Which of the following strategic approaches best navigates this scenario? Option A. Innovate Tech should unilaterally lower its price significantly to gain an immediate advantage, regardless of Synergy Corp's potential reaction or the long-term market impact. Option B. Innovate Tech should adopt a pricing strategy that, while not necessarily the highest possible price, avoids aggressive price reductions that could trigger a price war, thereby aiming for a stable market outcome that respects competitive principles and avoids potential regulatory scrutiny. Option C. Innovate Tech should immediately set its price at the lowest possible level to capture the maximum market share, assuming Synergy Corp will also adopt a low-price strategy. Option D. Innovate Tech should set its price at the highest possible level, betting that Synergy Corp will also choose a high price to maximize individual profits. The correct answer is B. Innovate Tech should adopt a pricing strategy that, while not necessarily the highest possible price, avoids aggressive price reductions that could trigger a price war, thereby aiming for a stable market outcome that respects competitive principles and avoids potential regulatory scrutiny. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires managers to anticipate and react to the strategic decisions of competitors, understanding that individual self-interest can lead to suboptimal collective outcomes. The core of the challenge lies in identifying situations where cooperation, despite individual incentives to defect, could yield better overall results for all parties involved, and understanding the limitations imposed by regulatory frameworks and ethical considerations. The correct approach involves recognizing the prisoner's dilemma dynamic and strategically choosing an action that, while potentially not maximizing immediate individual gain if the competitor cooperates, minimizes potential losses, and aligns with long-term sustainable market practices. This approach is justified by the regulatory framework's emphasis on fair competition and the avoidance of anti-competitive practices. By choosing a strategy that avoids aggressive, short-term gains at the expense of a price war, managers uphold principles of market stability and responsible business conduct, which are often implicitly or explicitly supported by competition law designed to prevent market manipulation and ensure consumer welfare. This aligns with the ethical imperative to act with integrity and consider the broader impact of business decisions. An incorrect approach would be to immediately engage in aggressive price cutting, assuming the competitor will do the same or seeking to exploit a perceived weakness. This fails to consider the potential for a mutually destructive price war, which could harm all market participants and potentially attract regulatory scrutiny for predatory pricing or anti-competitive behavior. Such an approach disregards the long-term health of the market and the potential for reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to unilaterally offer a significantly lower price without any assurance of reciprocity, hoping to gain market share. While seemingly aggressive, this can be strategically unsound if the competitor retaliates with even lower prices, leading to a race to the bottom that erodes profitability for everyone. This also risks being perceived as an attempt to unfairly disadvantage competitors, which could have regulatory implications. A further incorrect approach involves maintaining current pricing without considering the competitor's likely strategic moves, essentially ignoring the potential for a prisoner's dilemma. This passive stance can lead to being outmaneuvered by a more strategically astute competitor, resulting in a loss of market share and profitability without any proactive defense or strategic engagement. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Identifying the strategic interdependence. Recognize that the outcome of your decision depends on the decisions of others. 2. Analyzing potential payoffs. Consider the best case, worst case, and most likely outcomes for each possible combination of decisions. 3. Evaluating regulatory and ethical constraints. Ensure all potential strategies comply with relevant laws and ethical standards. 4. Considering long-term implications. Prioritize sustainable market practices and relationships over short-term, potentially destructive gains. 5. Communicating and coordinating where possible and legal. Explore opportunities for tacit or explicit cooperation if permitted by law to achieve mutually beneficial outcomes. Question 17. The risk matrix shows a consistent pattern of missed deadlines and low team morale within a project team. The project manager has observed a lack of clear direction from senior management and some underlying interpersonal friction among team members. Considering these factors, which leadership approach is most likely to be effective in addressing the team's underperformance and improving their overall engagement? Option A. Utilizing a transformational leadership approach to inspire the team with a compelling vision for future success. Option B. Applying the contingency theory of leadership by assessing the situational factors and adapting leadership style accordingly. Option C. implementing a purely task-oriented behavioral leadership style to ensure all tasks are completed efficiently. Option D, focusing solely on the inherent traits of the project manager and team members, assuming leadership effectiveness is determined by these innate qualities. The correct answer is B, applying the contingency theory of leadership by assessing the situational factors and adapting leadership style accordingly. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a manager to select the most appropriate leadership approach to address a complex team dynamic and performance issue, while adhering to the principles of effective management as outlined by the Associate in Management AIM framework. The challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of the team's underperformance, and then applying a leadership theory that is both theoretically sound and practically applicable within the organizational context. Careful judgment is required to avoid misinterpreting the situation or applying an ineffective leadership style, which could further exacerbate the problem and lead to negative outcomes for the team and the organization. The correct approach involves applying the contingency theory of leadership. This theory posits that the effectiveness of a leader's style is contingent upon various situational factors, such as the task structure, leader-member relations, and the leader's position power. In this scenario, the team's underperformance, coupled with a lack of clear direction and potential interpersonal friction, suggests that a rigid, one-size-fits-all approach would be inappropriate. A contingency leader would assess these situational variables and adapt their style accordingly, perhaps by providing more structure, building stronger relationships, or clarifying their authority to best suit the team's current needs. This aligns with the AIM's emphasis on adaptive and context-aware management practices, promoting effective problem-solving and team development. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on trait theory. This theory focuses on inherent personal qualities of leaders, suggesting that effective leadership is a matter of having the right traits. Applying this here would mean assuming the team's issues stem from a lack of specific traits in the current leader or team members, without considering the situational context or the impact of leadership behaviors. This is professionally unacceptable as it overlooks the dynamic nature of leadership and team performance and fails to address the underlying situational causes of underperformance. Another incorrect approach is to exclusively adopt behavioral theory. While this theory focuses on observable actions and behaviors of leaders, a strict adherence to it without considering the situation would mean applying a predetermined set of behaviors, e.g., task-oriented or relationship-oriented, without assessing whether those behaviors are appropriate for the current circumstances. For instance, a purely task-oriented approach might ignore crucial interpersonal issues hindering performance, or a purely relationship-oriented approach might fail to provide necessary direction. This is professionally unacceptable because it lacks the adaptability required to address complex team dynamics effectively. Finally, solely applying transformational leadership would also be an incorrect approach in this specific scenario. Transformational leadership focuses on inspiring and motivating followers to achieve extraordinary outcomes by appealing to higher ideals and values. While beneficial in many contexts, if the team's primary issues are a lack of clear direction, inadequate resources, or unresolved interpersonal conflicts, simply inspiring them without addressing these foundational problems may be insufficient. This is professionally unacceptable as it might overlook the immediate practical barriers to performance and fail to provide the necessary structure or support for the team to succeed. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multifaceted assessment. First, diagnose the problem thoroughly, considering both individual and team factors, as well as the broader organizational context. Second, evaluate different leadership theories and their applicability to the diagnosed problem and context. Third, select the approach that best addresses the specific challenges, prioritizing adaptability and effectiveness. Finally, implement the chosen approach, monitor its impact, and be prepared to adjust as needed, reflecting a continuous improvement mindset. Question 18. What factors determine the appropriate balance between inventory holding costs, ordering costs, and the need to maintain product availability and quality, while strictly adhering to the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines relevant to the Associate in Management AIM program's jurisdiction? Option A. The maximum reduction in ordering frequency, irrespective of potential stockouts or storage limitations. Option B. The lowest possible inventory holding costs achievable through aggressive just-in-time (JIT) inventory practices. Option C. the specific regulatory requirements for product storage, handling, and minimum availability, alongside ethical considerations of customer service and product integrity. Option D, the theoretical optimal economic order quantity, EOQ, calculation without regard for practical storage constraints or regulatory mandates. Correct answer is C, the specific regulatory requirements for product storage, handling, and minimum availability, alongside ethical considerations of customer service and product integrity. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with regulatory compliance and ethical considerations in inventory management. The Associated Management AIM program emphasizes understanding how theoretical concepts like EOQ, safety stock, and just-in-time JIT translate into practical, compliant business operations. The challenge lies in selecting an inventory strategy that not only minimizes costs, but also adheres to relevant regulations, avoids ethical breaches related to product availability or quality, and maintains customer trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that cost-saving measures do not inadvertently lead to non-compliance or ethical lapses. The correct approach focuses on a holistic assessment that integrates regulatory requirements and ethical implications with inventory management principles. This involves understanding the specific regulations governing product storage, handling, and availability within the relevant jurisdiction. For example, regulations might dictate minimum stock levels for certain essential goods or specify storage conditions that impact inventory holding costs. Ethically, a company has a responsibility to ensure product availability to meet reasonable customer demand and to maintain product quality throughout the supply chain. Therefore, the correct approach prioritizes a strategy that aligns with these obligations, using EOQ, safety stock, and JIT as tools to achieve efficiency *, these constraints, rather than as ends in themselves. This ensures that operational decisions are not only cost-effective, but also legally sound and ethically responsible, fostering long-term business sustainability and reputation. An incorrect approach that solely prioritizes cost reduction through aggressive JIT implementation, without considering regulatory mandates for stock levels or emergency preparedness, would be ethically and regulatorily flawed. Such an approach could lead to stockouts of essential items, violating consumer protection regulations, or failing to meet contractual obligations, and could be seen as unethical if it demonstrably harms customers or stakeholders due to unavailability. Another incorrect approach that relies on excessive safety stock purely to avoid potential stockouts, without considering the regulatory implications of storage capacity, spoilage, or obsolescence, would be inefficient and potentially non-compliant if storage regulations are breached. Furthermore, it could be ethically questionable if it leads to unnecessary waste of resources. An approach that ignores the interplay between EOQ calculations and the practicalities of regulatory compliance, such as the need for specific storage conditions that might increase holding costs beyond what EOQ suggests, would also be flawed. This could lead to non-compliance with health, safety, or environmental regulations, creating legal and ethical liabilities. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape and ethical duties. This should be followed by an assessment of business objectives, including cost efficiency. Inventory management techniques like EOQ, safety stock, and JIT should then be applied as tools to achieve these objectives, but always subordinate to regulatory and ethical requirements. This involves scenario planning, risk assessment, and continuous monitoring to ensure that inventory strategies remain compliant and ethical, even as market conditions or regulations change. Question 19. Examination of the data shows that the management team is considering 3 distinct strategic initiatives, each with a range of potential financial outcomes and associated probabilities of success. Initiative has a high probability of a moderate positive return, but a low probability of a significant loss. Initiative B has a moderate probability of a substantial positive return, but also a moderate probability of a moderate loss. Initiative C has a low probability of a very large positive return, but a high probability of a small loss. Which approach best guides the manager in making a decision that balances potential rewards with risks in a structured and justifiable manner? Option A. Select the initiative with the highest potential positive return, irrespective of its probability or the risk of loss. Option B. Choose the initiative that offers the most favorable outcome in the most likely scenario, without considering other possibilities. Option C. Evaluate each initiative by considering the potential financial outcomes weighted by their respective probabilities to determine which offers the most advantageous expected outcome. Option D. Opt for the initiative with the lowest potential financial loss, regardless of its potential for profit or growth. The correct answer is A. Select the initiative with the highest potential positive return, irrespective of its probability or the risk of loss. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a manager to make a decision under uncertainty, where the potential outcomes have varying probabilities and financial implications. The challenge lies in moving beyond gut feeling or simple intuition to a more structured and defensible decision-making process, aligning with the principles of sound management and potentially regulatory expectations for due diligence and risk assessment. The Associated Management AIM framework emphasizes the importance of systematic approaches to decision-making, especially when financial resources and strategic direction are at stake. The correct approach involves using the concept of expected value to evaluate the potential outcomes of different strategic options. This method, while not requiring complex calculation in this context, provides a framework for comparing choices by considering both their potential payoffs and their likelihood of occurring. By systematically assessing each option's expected value, a manager can make a more informed and justifiable decision that balances potential rewards with associated risks. This aligns with the AIM's emphasis on analytical rigor and evidence-based decision-making, promoting accountability and transparency. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the most optimistic outcome of a particular option, ignoring the probabilities and potential downsides. This is professionally challenging because it represents a failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment, potentially leading to significant financial losses if the optimistic scenario does not materialize. From a regulatory or ethical standpoint, this approach could be seen as negligent or reckless, as it deviates from best practices in financial planning and risk management expected of management professionals. Another incorrect approach would be to choose the option with the highest potential payoff without considering its probability of success or the likelihood of negative outcomes. This is problematic because it prioritizes a speculative, albeit high, reward over a more balanced assessment of risk and reward. Such a decision could be challenged as being arbitrary and not based on a sound understanding of the business environment or the financial implications, potentially violating principles of prudent management and fiduciary responsibility. A further incorrect approach would be to select the option with the lowest potential downside, regardless of its potential for growth or profitability. While risk aversion is a valid consideration, an exclusive focus on minimizing loss without considering potential gains can lead to missed opportunities and stagnation. This approach fails to capture the essence of strategic decision-making, which often involves calculated risks to achieve significant positive outcomes, and may not align with the AIM's focus on driving organizational success. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Clearly defining the strategic options available. 2. Identifying all potential outcomes for each option, both positive and negative. 3. Estimating the probability of each outcome occurring. 4. Conceptually understanding how to weigh these outcomes by their probabilities to arrive at an expected value for each option. 5. Comparing the expected values to inform the final decision, ensuring it is rational, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and risk appetite. Question 20. When evaluating strategic options for a new product launch, which approach best reflects the Associated Management AIM, principles of responsible stakeholder engagement and ethical strategic analysis? Option A. Focusing exclusively on the potential profitability of the product, as this is the primary driver of business success. Option B. Conducting a thorough analysis of all key stakeholders, including customers, employees, suppliers, and the community, to understand their potential impacts and concerns, and integrating this understanding into the strategic plan. Option C. Engaging only with senior management to determine the strategic direction, as they possess the ultimate authority. Option D. Prioritizing the interests of the largest shareholder group to ensure maximum return on investment. Correct answer is D. Prioritizing the interests of the largest shareholder group to ensure maximum return on investment. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the strategic interests of the organization with the diverse and potentially conflicting expectations of its stakeholders. The Associated Management AIM framework emphasizes ethical conduct and adherence to regulatory guidelines, which are paramount when navigating complex strategic decisions. A failure to adequately consider stakeholder perspectives can lead to reputational damage, regulatory scrutiny, and ultimately, strategic failure. The correct approach involves a comprehensive stakeholder analysis that identifies all relevant parties, assesses their interests, influence, and potential impact on the strategic direction, and then integrates this understanding into the strategic planning process. This aligns with the AIM's emphasis on responsible management and good corporate citizenship, which necessitates understanding and responding to the legitimate concerns of all stakeholders, not just shareholders. Ethically, this approach promotes fairness and transparency. From a regulatory perspective, while specific regulations may vary, a failure to consider key stakeholders can sometimes lead to breaches of fiduciary duty or other compliance issues if their interests are demonstrably harmed by a strategic decision. An approach that solely focuses on maximizing shareholder value without considering other stakeholders is ethically flawed, as it can lead to exploitation of employees, environmental damage, or disregard for community impact, potentially violating broader ethical principles and specific regulations concerning corporate social responsibility or environmental protection. An approach that prioritizes the interests of a single, powerful stakeholder group, e.g., a major investor, over others without a balanced assessment, is ethically problematic and can lead to regulatory challenges if it creates an unfair advantage or disadvantages other legitimate stakeholders, potentially contravening competition laws or fair dealing regulations. An approach that ignores stakeholder feedback or concerns altogether is professionally negligent and ethically unsound. It demonstrates a lack of respect for individuals and groups who have a vested interest in the organization's success, and can lead to significant legal and reputational repercussions, potentially violating consumer protection laws, employment regulations, or other statutes designed to protect various stakeholder groups. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with identifying all potential stakeholders. This should be followed by an analysis of their interests, power, and potential impact. The organization should then develop strategies to engage with these stakeholders, considering their feedback in the formulation and implementation of strategic plans. This iterative process ensures that strategic decisions are not only financially sound, but also ethically responsible and compliant with relevant regulatory frameworks.